Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Mastering Midlife podcast, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. I am your host, Mark Silverman. Today, I am joined by my friend and colleague, Bruce Dorey. Bruce and I met when I was part of a panel on coaching with him earlier this year, and we've shared stages since. And I really got fascinated. Bruce wrote this book called Lift. The nature and craft of expert coaching. And when I first heard that term, I didn't know what it meant. And after Bruce explained to me his philosophy, why he does what he does, I couldn't wait to get him to talk on this podcast about the people who are in the demographic that we're talking here, midlife. So Bruce, thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So you came from the world of manufacturing. You were an executive who flew around the world in various capacities and lived all around the world. And you decided to move into what we'll call executive coaching, and then you found your place in the hierarchy with this expert coaching. And if you would explain to me what expert coaching is, that would be better than me explaining it.
Sure, happy to. Yeah, I started my career. I'm an engineer, and I did probably the easiest thing you could do. I sold air conditioning in the Middle East. So I took a job right out of college in Saudi Arabia and then sort of went around the world, and thank goodness it stayed nice and hot over there and had a lot of work. But for a period of time, I came back from Saudi. After I came back, I did an MBA, worked as a consultant for a period of time and did some coaching and really enjoyed the one-on-one aspect of it. And at that point, coaching was very new. And all I knew is that I enjoyed it. And then when I went back into industry, it was the thing. So when I was in my 50s and really sort of at that stage in my career where, I wasn't really, my mission, my goal had changed. I wasn't trying to climb the ladder anymore. I was sort of okay where I was. And I got the most juice from just sitting and talking one-on-one with people. And I thought, I'm going to get back into coaching. And as I got back into it, I started to see the things that I really enjoyed and the things that made a difference. And one of the key difference that I talk about in expert coaching is this sort of natural process of coaching. If you take it, it's in sports or music or almost anything outside the domain of business, the expert is the coach. So you want to be a better basketball player, you hire a basketball coach. If you want to be a better, artist, you hire a coach that can help you with that for music or for whatever. And in business, I found it took a turn and it didn't necessarily match what I found in the industry. Because I found what in the industry, for me, that really worked was I had a unique knowledge in the air conditioning, the world of air conditioning. And I called that expert coaching. And I make the case that there's lots and lots of men and women in their late 40s, their 50s, their 60s, who have done something for 20, 25 years, and are really, really good at it. They may not know that they're really good at it, but, for example, in air conditioning, there's just a different pace. There is a cadence to the way people operate in the middle of winter versus the middle of summer. Words have different meaning in the air conditioning industry. And when you get somebody who's done marketing in the air conditioning industry for 20 years, they're really good. And they're really good to train the next generation. And as I was an executive back in the States, we were hiring coaches, and I would interview them, and I'd say, what do you know about air conditioning? And they'd say, well, nothing.
I know I like it.
I know I like it, and I'm glad it's on today. But so it sort of started to put pieces together when I saw my friends and colleagues kind of scratching their head like, what am I going to do next? I kept thinking, man, you should be a coach. This is a perfect time and the other part of it is, and Mark, you and I've talked about this, that there's a lot of us baby boomers, like 80 million ballpark in the United States and Canada, and we're transferring, and we're essentially moving out of the I'd say some of the operational aspects of corporate America, and the Gen X is coming in and taking over in the millennials, and there's a lot fewer Gen Xers, like 30%. So they'll have a lot to do, and I think that it's sort of it's a nice setup for people who want to get into coaching at this stage in the game.
So what piqued my interest with you is because me being a coach, I coach people in the financial industry. I coach people in the tech industry. I'm not industry specific, though I kind of grew up in the technology industry. And I am very effective with executives no matter where I am. Mm-hmm. What I loved about what you talked about was there are people who are aging out of the workforce and starting to feel obsolete. And right. What you're saying is the exact opposite is true. That as you are, the maturity that you are gaining, the expertise and the experience that you have is invaluable to the organizations where you grew up. So as you were talking about the marketing person in the air conditioning industry and the cadence and all that, they know the field. They can now coach as a basketball coach or as a baseball coach with knowledge, who was a former player, can come back and actually give that the expertise, the knowledge, and the experience straight out, rather than what we do as coaches, just kind of pulling inspiration out of people. What we can roll our eyes a little bit at that, and it's very much more practical. So on two folds, you're giving the organizations the opportunity to bring their people up with expert coaching, with people, mentors and consultants who know what they're doing. And then you're giving purpose to the people who feel like they're aging out of usefulness.
Yeah. Well, actually, we have talked about this too. And I think I call guys like you performance coaches and really leadership coaches, because that's needed too. It's really needed too. But there's also, I'm sort of saying, look, that is great, but that's sort of well established. What I'm suggesting is that the men and women who, rather than retire out and then start to, I like to say, paint or write a book or whatever they want to do, you stay in the industry and coach, take on, and you'd be surprised at how your knowledge, the 20 years men and women have picked up stuff about the industry, not necessarily about the current market, but more about there's an unbelievable amount of complexity in industry with things like, especially in heavy industry, with things like the price of metals, the trade balances in the country, the stock market, the interest rates, all of these things. One thing impacts another, and when you've been through the cycle a few times, you can help someone understand a big picture, rather than just the short-term coaching to do something. But the coaching to do something like what you do in terms of performance or leadership is still really valuable.
Yeah, don't worry about saving us. We're doing good. Yeah. So the question is, so one of the things that moved you is in talking to your peers and seeing the mental health tolls that it took on people.
Yeah.
Can you just share your experience with that?
Yeah, well, I actually start off in my book and talk about a good friend of mine. He and I known each other for years and years, and he on his 60th birthday, about a little bit less than a year after, he took early retirement, and I remember getting an email from him, and he sort of sounded okay about it, but clearly was conflicted and took his own life. And it just, once something like that happens, you start, when you're reading the newspaper or magazine, you start to see things. And I didn't realize it until I started writing the book, that there is a big increase of men and women in their 50s and 60s who are really struggling with depression and taking their lives. And I mean, the interesting thing for me is, this is probably the happiest I've been in my business career, meaning there's nothing I enjoy more than coaching. That to me, that's the name of the book, is Lift. And it's because of the lift that I get, the feeling, the elevated feeling of doing something really good for someone when they appreciate it. When they really, because when you're coaching, generally people really appreciate it, and it's a wonderful feeling.
So,
So
I'm a 55, 60-year-old guy or woman, and the company is starting to let it be known that I am no longer as welcome as I used to be. They love me, but there are people who will do my job for half the price, right?
right.
What do I do now to get myself ready for this next chapter if I'm really in a healthy, thoughtful position to make those changes for myself? What do you counsel people on doing to get themselves ready?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think the thing for me is it's sort of twofold. One is that you got to sort of stand up for yourself in one way. In other words, I know I had the experience that when I was finishing my career, I was in Dubai, and same sort of thing. They were bringing in the next general manager, and he was 20 years younger than I, and they're going to bring me back to the States, and I was starting to kind of buy into some, like, what's left for me and what am I going to do next, and I don't even know how to play shuffleboard. I'm not even, I'm not ready for any of that. And the experience of coaching changed everything for me. That I realized that, and there's now pretty good evidence that millennials and Gen Xers want to learn. They actually like mentoring. So what I suggest is that, inside of the company that you are, that, obviously speak to HR and those people, but post something saying, hey, mentor, I'm a mentor, 20 years in this part of the industry, willing to mentor for free for a period of time, or reasonable rates, or, mentoring in this industry. And I say reasonable rates, and because you got to start somewhere. And I know when I first started doing this, I took on some clients for free, and I just got back into the game.
So the first step is to hone to really actually learn how to transfer your knowledge, because that's not just because you know how to do something doesn't mean you know how to transfer that knowledge and that expertise. So now you can do that for free for people who are just hungry for it, to learn. You read, you watch, you maybe get your own coach, but then you learn how to do that. So now you're comfortable with your skill set, and it looks like you're moving towards retirement. What's next?
Yeah, well, the comfortable with the skill set is, you're right. That's exactly the thing. And I want to say one thing about it. It's surprising how many people there are that will pick up on that. So that's one thing. I don't think maybe your listeners, it's amazing how many people. I remember when somebody said, well, we're going to just offer your services. And I was doing a course, and they said, offer your services. And I'm like, who the heck? They don't even know me. Why are they? But there was I had 3 people right away, and within 6 months, everything. I was in the game. I was doing it.
So you're saying what you're saying, you're surprised that there was a hunger for it.
There's a hunger for it. Yeah. People are overworked, busy. They need help. And they don't know where to go, and they don't know how to find it.
So now how do you approach companies, either the company you work for or other companies, so that you can move into this next chapter in your life?
Well, for me, and if I was ever to write about it or something, how it happened was in the company that I used to work for. And I didn't necessarily market. I went to some of the industry events, so some of the conferences and things, and people say, hey, what are you doing now? And I'd say, hey, I'm now coaching. I have a little coaching business. And talk that way. And within a few months, I had some names, and I started to sort of call and do some of that kind of warm calling, you could say, and generated a couple of clients. And from there, it kind of went on. That I think the thing for me that distinguishes what an expert coach is that you've been in that industry for a period of time. So it's not, so you can sort of speak to, listen, I've been where you are. I've done what you're doing. I started doing this, and I went to there, and I became a VP, or I became a director, or I became a manager. And it speaks to someone, it's real empathy. It's not sort of, I can really help you. It's really, hey, listen, I've been where you are. And that's what I've found people really, really appreciated.
Got it. So an HR director or a CEO of a company is listening to this podcast. What do you want them to know about the talent pool that they already have that they haven't seen until we're opening their eyes?
That's a great question, because it didn't occur to me until I was writing the book that, there is just think about the investment that's gone into the senior executives or senior managers, senior directors, the training, the knowledge they've picked up on the job that literally walks out the door. And that transfer of knowledge is unbelievably valuable. And it's something that we took for granted essentially up until the Industrial Revolution. And then after that time, things have changed. But that transfer of knowledge is, I think CEO, and I know CEOs that I work with now absolutely agree. They love to hire from within. They didn't really even see it as an opportunity, but they now see it as a real possibility, an opportunity to use the men and women at all ranks, manager level, director level, to come in and maybe do one-on-one coaching, which frankly, that's the majority of the people that I work with and people that I've talked to and who are doing it. But there's also sort of group coaching and team coaching and all sorts of things.
Sure. So what I see is often companies will hire underneath people with the idea that this is going to be the replacement without telling the person who's being replaced, even though they know it,
Yeah.
and then have them train their replacement, and then they're put out to pasture.
Right.
So what you're saying is, why not be more overt about it and say, this should be the next phase of your career. Let's actually get you to be a contributor in this fashion, and it's much more above board.
Right. Exactly. And the book called The Coaching Habit, which I think is a great book.
Michael Bungay Stanier.
Yeah, it's a great book. And he sort of takes that case that, now he breaks it down pretty simply into 7 questions, I think, but I think that's it. I think it's a pretty overt thing that people, essentially managers can be really good coaches, and you'll find a really good manager is a really good coach.
Sure. So again, back to me. I'm a 55, 60-year-old guy in a company. What you're saying is the first thing I need to start to do is start thinking in this direction. This is where I want to go. And then I need to start reaching out, and I need to start helping people. I need to get known in my company as the go-to guy. I need to be more invaluable as the person who helps people along, who passes on knowledge and creates other stars than I am for the job that I'm doing now, so that when the time comes to make that transition, I'm the natural go-to person.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And yeah, as I said, I was shocked at how receptive people were, and people who didn't even know me.
Sure.
So there's a hunger, and I think it's a natural hunger that people are really busy these days.
Sure. So we started this talk off talking about the debt, the toll it takes on people to feel useless, to be pushed out of usefulness and out of their companies. And then you talked about your friend and suicide and mental health issues and all that. Now tell me some stories or vignettes about people who have actually moved into this, and what has that done for them?
Yeah, I've had a couple of friends who are doing this. And one of the things that they talk about is they're doing the thing that first of all, after you do something for 10, 20 years, people that I talk to, they say, I didn't really start out to be this, but after 20 years, it's what I knew. And I actually really enjoy doing it. I didn't realize I had a special knowledge. And what these guys in particular, these are two men are really good friends, have picked a very narrow aspect of the air conditioning industry, which is energy recovery, heat recovery, energy recovery in North America. And they've got a target, and they know exactly sort of who to talk to in the different companies. And they're busy. They're doing what they enjoy doing. They all, sort of sing the song that, I wish I had started doing this earlier, but they're all really, they get up and go to work and enjoy things now. They're working hard and having a good time, for the most part. And the thing that I wanted to say is that I think one of the things for me is I had to realize nobody's going to do this for me. That industry is not, there's no bargain with industry that we get to keep our jobs and we get to become coaches afterwards. This is something you got to go get. And it's just really that kind of mindset that nobody's going to knock on your door and say, hey, will you mentor me? You've got to, but I do want to make the case again that when you do that, it's amazing how receptive people are.
Beautiful. And so I love this avenue of taking just another chapter in your career, in your life, and to combat the uselessness, to combat the loneliness, which they do studies that loneliness and uselessness are equal to smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day as far as your mortality rate. So really staying in the game and finding creative ways to stay in the game, I think is the way to think about this aging process. Bruce, this has been fantastic. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave the listeners with?
I mean, it's interesting because I think the thing I want to, if I could just leave with, is that I was just in Dubai working with a customer, actually. I used to have, and that customer has now hired me to do some work with their senior team. So that's possible too. But one of the guys I used to work with there is now doing some coaching on the side and is considering he's probably going to be a coach. And, he and I one afternoon, I don't know, years ago, we were sitting together and he shared with me how he was really struggling. His wife had passed away. This was like 15 years ago. His wife had passed away. He was just working to work. He was, in Dubai, and because of his citizenship, which was in the Middle East, he couldn't go anywhere really, really sort of like, you could just feel it. The guy was isolated, living alone. He's a different guy. He's a different man. He's got a couple of clients now on the side. He's doing this. He's coaching. He's speaking at different events, and he looked at me this last time and he said, I do have something to be proud of. Those 20 years I put in, I do have something to be proud of. And I thought, that's the whole thing right there. So many of us, we get up, we grind for 20, 30 years. Not everybody does that. That's really valuable. That's something that is really, I think, something to be really proud of, particularly if you're doing something you are proud to do and you do well. There's nothing like being able to share that. So I think that's how I like to end things.
Bruce, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Again, the book is called Lift: The Nature and Craft of Expert Coaching, and it's really a good read, whether you want to be a coach or not, just if you want to be a better leader in your organization. What are you up to next? What's your next project?
Going to Dubai tomorrow. Doing more work in the Middle East, believe it or not. They need help. No, I shouldn't say it that way, but doing more work internationally, which is where I really love to work. I lived and worked in the Middle East for 20 years. So
this podcast is going to be heard all around the world. Where can people find you?
www.brucerdorey.com.
Okay, and I will post that link also. I really appreciate you taking the time, and thank you everybody for listening to this episode. If you like this episode, please share it, comment, let me know who you'd like me to interview, if there's subject matter that you'd like us to cover in this podcast. Thank you. I love you, and have a great rest of the day.